Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Olivia and I have filmed this video twice now and hated both of them, so third time's a charm. So, in the past 2 months, I've read 15 books, so let's talk about them. You'll have to excuse the fact that I don't have a big stack of books here. I'm in the process of moving and packing, so all of my books are all packed up, so I don't have them to show you the beautiful covers. So the first book I read in April was Gallant by Ve Schwab. This is the first book I fully finished by Ve Schwab, and I really liked it. This was my second 5-star read of the year. This is the story of Olivia Pryor, who has been an orphan for a majority of her life. She gets a mysterious letter from her uncle saying that there's something wrong with the family home Gallant and she needs to come. She arrives and finds out no one who lives in the house sent her that letter. It's a lot like a classic gothic novel, a little bit like Coraline. She goes through a wall and finds a mirror of her world that's a little off, a little spooky. Great book. I think that this, even though this is Ve Schwab's latest release, this is a perfect entryway into their style of writing, the worlds that they create. The way that the worlds are written is very similar to something like Darker Shade of Magic, also by Ve Schwab. It's a great entry into their writing, which is why I was so excited to finally pick up Darker Shades of Magic and finish it this time. I've picked it up and put it down like 3 times, so yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Then I read the second book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. I initially thought that you didn't have to read these books in order. Turns out you do, just because there's like, I don't want to call it a spoiler, but they're in birth order. They were written that way, they were released in that way, so I decided to read them in that way. This one has, the main character in this one, Dani Brown, is the middle child. She is a PhD student. This book has great bisexual representation. The love interest is, I can't remember what country, but he's somewhere in the Middle East. It has good representation of that. And obviously Dani Brown and all of the Brown sisters are Black women, so just great contemporary romance. I highly recommend these if you want to get into contemporary romance. I know a lot of people hate the cartoon covers. I'm personally a fan of them because I find that a lot of the ones with the cartoon covers are the ones that have the best varied, diverse representation in them. Then I think I just became very stressed out and flustered with everything that's going on in my life between apartment hunting, moving across the country, dealing with all the logistics of that. I said I need a comfort read, so I reread A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I did this on audiobook. I listened to it at 1.4 speed. I wasn't doing it to like get into the story. I was like, this is a comforting story for me because it's the book that got me back into reading. And so it was just nice to read. It is interesting to reread this one and then to reread the second one, which is A Court of Mist and Fury, and see, because if you know anything about the book series, you know the love interest changes, so it's very interesting to go back and read the first one and see all of the red flags that I missed, because whenever I read fantasy books, I'm not there to try and outsmart the author. I'm not there to try and like figure out the plot. I'm just there for a good time, and that's what it was. So no, the first time around, I did not figure out the riddle, even though it is in fact glaringly obvious. I wasn't there for that, but yeah, it's interesting to go back and see where the red flags were, and it was like, oh, I missed that. But it's also interesting because this book was initially like marketed to me or recommended to me as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then the second one, Hades and Persephone. Upon more delving into storytelling, a bit more Greek mythology, I've come to find out that Beauty and the Beast and Hades and Persephone, same story, because you know, the beastly man takes the young innocent girl away the castle, turns out, or the underworld, turns out he's not that bad of a guy. They actually fall in love. It's the same story. So yeah, the first book I was told was Beauty and the Beast. Second book is Hades and Persephone, same story. And then I read A Court of Wings and Ruin because I figured I'm just gonna finish off the story. This is where I actually, upon the second read, it was interesting. This book seriously needed to be edited because this is where I found, and I had spent so much time with this author that I was like, your writing is really repetitive. She latches onto certain, I don't want to say tropes, but there's like a thing where Reese keeps picking invisible lint off of his jacket whenever he's nervous, or he sticks his hands in his pocket. I think if I were to go through and get like an ebook of it and like Google, or not Google, but like search the phrase, it would come up like 500 times. So this is where I realized a lot of the flaws in her writing. This book also has kind of a, I don't want to say harmful stereotype, but she threw in some representation of LGBTQ, but it was so like half-assed. It just wasn't it. And I did feel that way the first time around, but it like really bugged me this time. Then I read Court of Frost and Starlight. It's the novella. This is the one everyone calls the Hallmark special. I disagree. I actually think it's really tragic. It perfectly sets up my favorite book in the series, Court of Silver Flames, which I did in fact read. It sets up Nesta and Cassian perfectly. This is my favorite book in the series because I can relate to Nesta the best. It's interesting. So all of Sarah J. Maas's books, across all of her series, haven't read Crescent City yet. Across the 2 series that I've read, Throne of Glass and Court of Thorns and Roses, are about healing from your own trauma and all of the hardships in your life and how are you going to move on. So with Feyre's a very likable, agreeable character. So Nesta, in contrast to Feyre, is not a likable character. She is fiercely independent. She has a lot of self-loathing. She will then internalize that self-loathing and ostracize herself from a group. And then when anyone has anything to say to her, she'll lash out, say something really horrible, or just be downright nasty, and she doesn't want anything to do with that. That's my personality. Hate to break it to you guys, but yeah, that's how I am. So it's actually really nice to see a character like that, and not in a I'm not like other girls kind of way. It's just a less common personality for a main character. And so I really appreciated that. I really appreciated her journey. I'll be curious to see how she puts that healing into the next book when she focuses on the third sister, Elaine, and that relationship. But yeah, it's my favorite book in the whole series. It has a lot to do with like mental health and just, yeah, it's just a really good book. You kind of need to read the whole series to get to that one and understand it. But if you don't read any of other ones, look up the Nesta Cassian chapters from Frost and Starlight and then Silver Flames, and I just love it so much. I cried 3 times reading this book again. And then I figured, oh, I'm on a Sarah J. Maas train. Let's just get into it, because I really want to read Crescent City, but a lot of people are saying that all 3 series connect, so Throne of Glass with A Court of Silver Flames, and then they're all coming together in Crescent City. So I revisited Throne of Glass. It's worth noting that I read the first 2 books in the series last summer, and I didn't like them. The first one I thought was okay, and I was curious about the second one. The second one had a really, really, really harmful stereotype of a Black character sacrificing and setting up their own death to progress the emotional capacity and the drive of our white main character, who I wasn't a huge fan of to begin with. So I stepped away from it, and then I said, you know what, I'm curious about Crescent City. I would like to have a nuanced conversation on TikTok, which is where I do most of my bookish content, and then sometimes on here. I'd like to have a nuanced conversation about what makes this book so popular and why I didn't like it and all of that. So I listened to the Assassin's Blade audiobook, hated it. I needed to revisit the world, but it just reminded me of all the things I hated about the series. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read the series. And then I got to Heir of Fire. I found it at a used bookstore. I found Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, and Empire of Storms at a used bookstore. Maybe I'll like it better if I read it. Like physically read it. And this is the Heir of Fire is the book that everyone says, oh, her writing drastically improves. It did drastically improve. There is no backtracking on the horrible stereotype that she put in Crown of Midnight, but it is interesting to see how she expanded the world. She added more characters that have better chemistry within the world and within each other. She had a lot of setup for the next book, Queen of Shadows, which I also read, and I really enjoyed that one. My favorite character, in case you're wondering, my favorite characters and couple are Dorian and Manon. Look at them, they're gorgeous, they're the best. It was interesting to see, like, this is where her writing really picked up. Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows, I believe, were being written at the same time as the first A Court of Thorns and Roses book, or were released around the same time. And so a lot of the imagery actually shows up not only in the Throne of Glass series, but also in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and that's just her style, like that's her signature, so I was like whatever about it. And it's still the same kind of repetitive tropey writing, but like I said, they're really fun. And like I also said, there's no backtracking on what she did in Crown of Midnight. She also does this thing where she throws in LGBTQ plus characters for the sake of having them in her stories, and it feels really half-assed, and I wish she would stop doing that, because it would be so much more authentic if she didn't put them in there at all than just being like, okay, this person's bisexual, this person's gay, like, we got them. That's not representation. That's bullshit. I didn't have Tower of Dawn, which was the next book in the series, so I listened to a couple of audiobooks. I listened to the audiobook for Daughter of Sparta by Claire Andrews. As I mentioned before, I love Greek mythology. This was supposed to be a retelling of Apollo and Daphne. It is a retelling in the sense that those are our main characters, and their relationship is very different as opposed to the original, which I looked up. And it just includes a lot of references to Greek mythology. It's more of historical fiction, emphasis on the fiction, which I like the references to the Minotaur. I like the references to all of the different Greek gods. It was just fun, and it was something that I was looking for. It actually functions kind of like a fantasy romance in the sense that there is magic, the two characters fall in love, which doesn't happen in the original. Daphne vehemently rejects Apollo. There is going to be a second one called Blood of Troy, and I will be picking it up next, which is just going to be my fun YA Greek mythology series. So yeah, there's a lot less overtly sexual content in these because they're young adult than original Greek mythology, but it's fun. I do recommend it. Then I decided I'm reading a lot of fluffy fiction, so let me read some heavy fiction. The next one I read was American Street by Evie Zavoy. This is the story of a young girl. She's like 16 years old. She moves from Haiti to Detroit. Her mother, unfortunately, who is supposed to be moving with her, gets detained and then deported back to Haiti, unfortunately. So Fabiola, our main character, is left to live with her aunt and her cousins in Detroit. So it's about her learning to navigate essentially on her own because her cousins who are about her age, and obviously her mother's not there and her aunt's not really there either, to navigate this new country with a new social rules, just a new social dynamic that she's not used to. It's very interesting too because obviously she's thrown into inner city Detroit, so she's also left to face with racism and police brutality and gun violence and all of the other things that, happen due to these economic inequalities. And there was one line that really punched me in the gut, and it's something I'm hyper aware of. I think about it all the time, is that she said multiple times throughout the story that she was like, everyone talked about America as this place of dreams and freedom, but it's really no different than Haiti. And as an American, and I remember when the earthquake hit Haiti, just the way that the country was portrayed in the media, I know very little about it. I'm not going to say that I know anything about it, in fact. But like I said, this was a heavy story, but it was a good story, and it was one that I would recommend, and it's one that I needed to read because it's always good to read books that expand your point of view on the world. So I'm glad I read this one. And then I got my book Tower of Dawn in the mail. So I did the tandem read for Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. It was really fun to do. I read it in about 4 days, both books in about 4 days. I was under a time crunch because I had to travel to Connecticut and I didn't want to lug 2 books around with me. So I initially wanted to do the tandem read because I had heard through the internet that Tower of Dawn was about a character that I couldn't stand. Kale, to me, I hated the way he spoke to women. I hated the way that he was so attached to his traditional values, and I just didn't like him at all. And this book was really about his journey to, well, one, he ends up in a wheelchair, and it really, in my opinion, as an mostly able-bodied person, I have a hearing disability, to see the way that he went about learning that he's not less of a man because he needs a wheelchair, and that he is capable of doing this. It's not going to be a burden on his life. And he also gains this perspective on the way that he's been treating the women around him. Again, I'm not the biggest K.O. fan still to this day. I love his wife. I love his wife. But yeah, it ended up being more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. There's also 2 other characters, Nesrin and Sartak. They have their own little love story in this book as well, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be. People talked about it like it was the worst. It's not the worst. And then Empire of Storms follows the rest of the crew: Aelin, Rowan, Adian, Lysandra, Manon, Dorian. Really good book. So that was really fun to read. And then it was the epic finale of Throne of Glass, which was Kingdom of Ash, and it was 980 pages, and I read it in like 3 days because it was so fun. It was an emotional roller coaster. It was a good ending for the story. It wasn't like the best. I don't know what it is about epilogues. They always just like ruin the story for me. I'm gonna stop reading them. Yeah, it was fun. Overall, I'd give this series like a 3.5 in terms of star rating because it's not the best. Her writing's not the best. There's like a couple of typos in each book as well. The representation is questionable. But overall, it's a fun story. It's the elevator pitch for it is supposed to be if Cinderella was an assassin and a fae queen in hiding. And also, like I said, a lot of her books are about healing from trauma. That seems to be the central theme in all of it. So I can really appreciate that in terms of storytelling. They're character driven and the characters in this book series are absolutely elite. And then the last book I read this month, I need to rant about for a second. So this video is already like 20 minutes long. So I read If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This is a contemporary romance Cinderella story retelling with a plus size woman in a bachelor style TV show setting. So I was like, okay, this is just gonna be goofy and fun, who cares, right? And then I saw something on the spine, and on the spine of the book, it has the publisher's name. Publisher, Hyperion Avenue. If you're a Disney adult, your ears just picked up, because mine did. And I was like, Hyperion Avenue? Was this book published by Disney? So I did a little digging, and it turns out Hyperion Books was first, then it transferred to Disney Publishing, and then Disney Publishing transferred half of its marketing or whatever to the ABC television group. Do you know who owns The Bachelor? ABC. I was like, are you kidding me? All right, let's see what Disney's got for me for contemporary romance, right? Because Hyperion Avenue is specifically targeted towards adult readers. And when I tell you, some of these, this book was chock-a-block full of bad references. Now, some of them only a Disney adult would catch, i.e. the main character's name is Cindy Woods, and her mother that passes away, her name is Eileen Woods. Do you know who voiced Cinderella in the Disney movie? Eileen Woodley. It's a very blatant name. Also, the stepmother's name is Erica Tremaine, Lady Tremaine. It's two on the nose. And then, on top of that, Bachelor style TV show, there's zero other reference. And then, she has 3 step siblings on top of her 2 stepsisters, who are not mean, by the way. The stepmother's not mean either, which I appreciated seeing. She has 3 little toddler step siblings whose names are Gus, Jack, and Mary, the mice. It's the fact that it's the same names that really bothers me. And then one of the dates they go on the show is like, we're going to see The Lion King on Broadway, and they try and like make a joke like, oh, this isn't the date that I wanted to take you on. I'm just like, the entire thing had me like wanting to throw up. The references were too much, and it's kind of the thing where like, I feel like most people wouldn't catch them, but I also feel like if you're picking up a Cinderella retelling, you're gonna know the references, so it was just too much. But then on top of that, because Disney can't make it spicy, and I felt like the author wanted to make it spicy, there were just moments where I was like, are we pushing it? And I forget what it was, but basically, the 2 characters that are falling in love, and they're really cute. I actually like the 2 main characters, Cindy and Henry. They're adorable. I have no critiques about them or how they fell in love or anything like that. It was very cute. But they snuck off at one point to talk to each other, and Henry is like, you have no idea the things I want to do to you. And I was like, oh, are we gonna get spice? And then like a few chapters later, it's a very vague like, and the bedroom door closed softly, and she fell asleep watching his chest rise, and I was like, it's so vague. Like, just the setup for that door close and then the falling asleep, it was so vague. There was nothing, and I was like, well, you set up nothing. So in my opinion, I get that it's Disney. I get that they're not gonna make it spicy, but either do it or don't do it. None of this in between. That's not for me. There's either, I'm like 0 or 100. Lily, you are zonked. Oh, look at you. Wow, Lily, wow. Those are all the books I read in April and May, and I have for June and then maybe July. July is my birthday month, so I'm gonna buy some books. I have to read for the next few weeks. I have 4 books for June and maybe a little bit of July. I've got the Darker Shade of Magic series, which is 3 books, and then I have the last book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, which I would like to finish off before the end of the year. And then for my birthday, the 3 books I plan to buy to read, and then 1 book I'm picking up because Amazon canceled my pre-order. I don't want to talk about it. So I'm gonna pick up the 2 Crescent City books, and then one of my favorite authors for contemporary romance is Emily Henry. The name of the book is called Book Lovers. Apparently, it's a grumpy girl and a grumpy guy. I love when the characters are grumpy, speaking as a grumpus herself. So yeah, I'm gonna pick those up, and then I'm gonna get the hardcover edition of The War of Two Queens because I pre-ordered that in February and Amazon canceled my order, so I'm very upset. Hi, do you wanna come say goodbye? Thank you all so much for watching. I would appreciate if you click the subscribe button, even if videos are gonna be a little far and few between as I move from Georgia to California. All of my life is in boxes. I'm gonna do my best. I do have some packing videos filmed. They're not edited yet. I'm gonna work on that once all of my stuff is out of here. If you are curious to keep up with me everywhere else, please follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I post daily videos there if you're not sick of my face yet. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!